nice, easy meeting for us today. Our main goal today is to really dive into the Grantee Portal and just kind of explain it a little bit, explain your guys' access, some of the options that are available on the portal, and how you guys will be using it this year. So Ellery is our intern student. Her name is Ellery Lane. She has a state of Wyoming email, and she has really been instrumental in setting up this. So we're very thankful and very lucky to her. She is also going to be kind of your main contact person as of right now to get any access. That if you seem to be having any troubles or running into problems getting access to anything, she is your main contact. So her email is Ellery, ELLERY .Lane, LANE, at WYO.gov. And just always remember to CC me just so I'm in the loop, Cecilia. So here's the portal itself. The portal has a home page, which is what we're looking at right now. Everybody should have access to the portal. My recommendation is that you would take this and just bookmark it so that way you have, I already have it bookmarked, but so that way you have it at the ready whenever you need it. It does require a Google email. So if you don't have a Google email, Cecilia has volunteered her services to help you get that Google email. It's a really easy process. It doesn't necessarily have to be tied in to your work email, and it can be used primarily just for the portal if that's how you want to use it. So any questions about a Gmail or getting access, just reach out to Cecilia and she can help you with that part.
I'm comfortable using my personal Gmail. Is that fine?
Absolutely, 100%. Yep. What we'll want to do, Doug, is just reach out to Ellery and let her know that that's the email that you'll be using to access it. And the reason you want the Gmail, you can actually access the portal itself without a Gmail account. But when we get into updating the invoices and org standards, we're going to be doing that using Google Sheets, and that's where you really need the Gmail account. So appreciate that if you could send that off to Ellery. So here's the home page. The home page is basically grouped into three different areas, I guess. So the intro area, we have grantee resources off to the side. Grantee resources include the CSBG policies. So these are the policies that are located on our CSP website. The goal is to really start looking at the CSP website as a public-facing website that creates useful information for the public to be able to go to and find how to contact their grantees and learn more about what the services are, the state plan, those type of things, where the portal is actually going to be more for the grantees. So it's going to have really useful information specifically in-house, where the CSP website on the state website will be more for the public. So we have policies. We also have timeline and due dates. So here, if you click on the pop-out button right here, you can see that we have a really useful document that really kind of gives you a guideline on what could be accomplished each month and when the deadlines are. We've also provided you suggestions on your board meetings. I don't know if suggestions is a strong enough term, maybe recommendations or hoping that you'll follow these. So if you are following all of these steps, then you should be good to go when it comes to getting all of your reports in and meeting all of the deadlines. You can see that we broke them up into months. You can also see that the quarterly meetings are here as well. for each of the months. We will be meeting at our quarterly meetings, 9 a.m. on the second Tuesday of the months that the quarterly meetings are going to be. So that way you can go ahead and plan in advance, and I'll be sending out information on all of the Google Meet, so you have that information to be able to get into the meeting. So this just goes throughout the year. You can see that we will be closing the grant in October of 2024. So just keeping ahead of all of the timelines and the due dates on that. Going back to the homepage. We also have our state plan that you can access, and any guidance that comes out from the state, we will also be putting here in the portal, so you have access to that. We also have this up at the top, and that also has the same resources that are listed here is also available here. Down below, you'll see that each of the grantees have their own portal. Ellery is still working on finding really great pictures. So not everybody has their pictures, but this should be fully implemented by next Wednesday. So all of these pictures and everything should be included. You can also access your grantee portals here on the side. So either one of these. Today, we're going to be looking at invoices, and so I didn't want to really be showing everybody's budgets to everybody, so I asked Ellery just to give us an example here.
Can you put the link to that in the chat, pretty please?
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know if you'll have access yet, because Ellery was waiting until we had our meeting so everybody wouldn't get on and kind of freak out in advance. Have you received any invite or anything as of right now, Doug?
I have not.
Okay. If you would send me your Gmail account, I will get you access as soon as we finish up with the meeting today.
Okay. No worries. I was just bookmarking.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll
Looks
go
like it's not running yet, so it's erroring. So maybe after the meeting it'll be accessible.
Perfect. Okay. Cecilia, would you be able to troubleshoot that a little bit while we do our meeting today, just to see if we can have them any new information available?
Sure, I'll take a look.
Thanks. So here's what each entity's portal is going to look like. Again, this is the example that we're just using today, but you'll see that there is a spot for invoicing, a spot for org standards, quarterly reports, on-site monitoring. We're also looking at instituting kind of a client survey location. And then up here is your application and your contract that you will have for fiscal year 24. So all of your application documents have already been moved into your application section. And as soon as we get contracts executed, we'll also upload the PDF fully signed version there, so you can access it at any time. We are still working on a couple of these, so they are under construction. The under construction includes quarterly reports, on-site monitoring, and client surveys. So we'll be talking more about those during our quarterly meetings. Today, we're going to focus on invoicing, and I'm also going to show you a little bit about organizational standards, so you can get in, start playing with that a little bit. CSNO will be hosting an organizational standard training and Q&A session on October 10th. So you might want to look at your schedules and make sure that you have that down to attend, and we'll dive more into organizational standards. So let's take a look at the invoicing. When you click the invoicing tab, you'll see that there's two parts. Part one is the actual spreadsheet, and part two are supporting documents. So on part one, you have some instructions over here on how to complete. You also have the ability to either click the tab that will take you to your spreadsheet or click the pop-out button. When you click that tab, you should be automatically accessing it through the Google spreadsheet. And what that means is your updates will be in real time. So I'll be able to take a look at them as soon as they are completed by you. They should also be locked according to the different categories that you'll be using. Instructions are on the cover page here. And then each of the months are listed down here. So we'll take a look at October 2023. And what we've done is we have made sure all of the areas for our entities to complete will be in yellow. So anytime that you're looking at a spreadsheet that requires some attention from you guys, just be looking at the yellow areas, and that technically means that's your area to complete. So we will ask you to fill out kind of your information based on who your fiscal contact person is. This is a good time to also remember who needs to have access from your agency. So it may only be you from your agency, or maybe you have someone else who's actually doing the invoicing. Maybe you have a fiscal person. In that case, you would probably want them to have access to this folder. So again, email Ellery, CCing Cecilia and I, asking her and letting her know, you know, this is the agency, this is the person, and this is the folder that they would have access to. If you want them to have access to all folders, you can say that. Or if it's just for the invoicing area, then you can say that as well. So here we have an approved budget, just a sample here, and the yellow areas that you'll be filling out for your expenses. Everybody should already have their initial allocation marked down in here. When you have a dollar amount over here and you spend outside of that dollar amount, it will give you the variance of where you're at on your spending. And if you overspend, if it's over 30%, it will automatically give you kind of a red alert, letting you know that you need to ask our office for approval for a budget modification. So this just kind of helps you understand where you're at on spend down. Anytime you add information in column C, it will be carried forward for the rest of the year as well. And as you continue to add dollar figures, it will continue to add those dollar figures. So that way you'll have a good understanding of where you're at on your budget. You also have your total budget here, the total amount that you have spent for that month, year-to-date expenses, and where you're at with your budget spend down. For the months of October and November, it will be calculating out your initial allocation. So, for example, we'll say that the initial allocation was $5,000. You've spent $2,000, then that means that the balance of your initial payment is $3,000. If you overspend your initial allocation, it will show in parentheses, and that's the amount that you're actually invoicing for the month of October. And this is just an easy way to calculate your initial spend down amount and how much is due at the time of the invoice. So this is the invoice itself. Any questions about the invoice process itself?
So if we do have overspends and we do get your approval, who's going to make those adjustments on the budget lines?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I appreciate that. That will be our office. And what we'll do is we're not going to keep adding separate tabs for your modification. We'll just go back to October and modify this dollar amount. And subtract from this dollar amount. So whatever your modification is will be completed real time using the October. And then for our purposes, we'll also keep copies of your budget modification requests on file just so we have those, but it will actually show on the original budget, and that should just carry through for the future months. So if you ask for a budget modification in March, we'll actually make that change on the October. And that way in March, you'll have an understanding of, okay, so based on the current process, we have 44% spent down. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Are these downloadable for us to track internally, to do double tracking, so to speak?
Absolutely. Yes. If you'd like to, you're welcome to download. And so you can just download right here, download into Excel and save it that way. You can also save it as a PDF. So that way you can have it for your records. If you choose to print, all of the sheets should already be adjusted so they fit onto one page. So that way you can just print and it already has your margins and everything set up. So however you want to use those internally, by all means, please do so. It doesn't show right here because I have full access for editing, but when you guys are looking, these areas will actually be locked. Anything that's not in yellow will be locked, just to make sure that you know, we don't lose background information or anything. When this is completed, I will go into this at the 10th of every month, and I will complete any of the invoices and complete vouchers on my end and get those sent to our fiscal department by the 15th of the month. Any voucher or any invoices that are completed after the 10th will be processed the last day of the month. So any other questions? Yeah.
Like, know when are you just, as long as it's in by 5 on the 10th, there's no sending this to you. You already have access to it. So there's no, as long as it's done by 5 on the 10th.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Absolutely. And I know that we've had some struggles with payments. I think that we've made some good progress from when I first started last year. And I think that is just going to continue to really increase. Number one, with this system. But number two, we're down some entities, so that saves the state some time. We also are really requiring that these come in before the 10th. That's going to save the state time. Instead of doing them multiple times during the month, we're saying we will do them twice a month. And also not having CARES invoices. It's also going to help speed up the process for payment. So we're really hoping for a good, strong process moving into 24.
Love the streamlining. Quick question on the locked up pieces. I assume that when we download, those will still be locked?
Yes, that's a really good question. Actually, no, they won't. When you Excel and spreads work really well together in a lot of fashions. They don't work so good when it goes to locking. Cecilia has spent hours and hours trying to troubleshoot this. Cecilia, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, I think so what's going to be different, Doug, for the invoice forms that you guys are all using as opposed to this example here is that what I had to do was go in and change them to a Google Sheets form. So that's to be able to lock essentially the panels. So I actually don't know the answer to your question of whether if you download a Google Sheets version onto a hard drive, if the protections that have been put in place there remain. But I mean, we're all adults here, so we kind of trust you not to go fiddling around too much. And Heather will also bring this up again in the org standards discussion. So, you know, if something does show to be unlocked, just kind of leave it how it was. Sorry.
My bigger concern is since we're in year one of direct services, the potential for our budget to having to be moved around and things of that nature is probably pretty high. And so I'm just trying to get a double tracking system in place for year one so that, you know, life gets crazy. And so I just want to be able to be on the same page and make sure that I can double track against your guys' numbers. And if we're off, then we can have that discussion of where that is and what that was.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I think, you know, if you or any of the other grantees experience, you know, whatever comes through a year of doing service delivery, everybody's going to experience something where you need to change and pivot how you're distributing funds. And that's totally understandable and totally expected. So I think what we're just going to ask to see from you, from everybody, is that you reach out to Heather and I with sort of a request, and we can go in here and change your budget numbers for you. But yeah, if you want to have, like, but I believe it would be totally reasonable for you to download and kind of play with a version of this for yourself to see how it's going to work out for yourself, and then just let us know and we can change the actual original.
Yeah, my head gets busy and shaky from time to time, so I just want to make sure that I have something on my desktop that I'm looking at that I'm like, oh yeah, we're both in line and we're both on the same page. That's all.
Yeah, and I think, Doug, as you become more familiar with Google, you'll see that there's some real advantages with that. In fact, it may behoove you not to save in Excel, just because when you do, you just have the latest update with Excel. But if you're comfortable with using Google Sheets, you can log on at any time and see the most updated version, like right there. There are some benefits to have it saved on your desk drive or, you know, on your desktop, so that way you have it. But I'm interested to see how this process works, and I'm hoping that the real-time updates will be really beneficial for all of us too.
Yeah, I really like this format. I thank you guys for doing that.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for all the recommendations and suggestions. It helps us get better, which helps you guys become more efficient and be able to work on the things you guys need to work on instead of wasting a bunch of time. So that is the first part of invoicing. The second part of invoicing is uploading your supporting documents. And so you can see with uploading supporting documents, it gives you some information on how to do that. It also shows you what documents are recorded or required, not recorded, required. So for each month, you will need to upload a detailed financial statement. And if you're a county, and if you have a county voucher, then you would upload that. One thing you'll see that is not included are receipts and individual bills and individual payments. We are not requesting all of that from you guys. Some agencies have been supplying it, some agencies have not. There's been kind of differences with the state's, I guess, recommendation on what to supply. So we're just making it really clear across the board. We do not need those. We will be looking at those when we come for our on-site reviews, and we are able to request them at any time if necessary. But as far as your monthly uploads, we're just requesting your detailed financial statement from whatever accounting software you're using, whether it's QuickBooks or something else, and then the voucher if you use a voucher for the county. Here you'll see the drop-down box. And in the drop-down box, you will have access to folders for each of the months that you are invoicing for. So if you're invoicing for the month of October, you would just open that up and you would upload your document right here. There's two easy ways to upload your document. You can right click, and when you right click, it says file upload. You would check that, and then you would just upload whatever item that you're looking for. and then that item, it would automatically just be uploaded. Okay, so that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to just drag and I don't know why my wording, drag and drop. So if you're comfortable with dragging and dropping, you can do that as well. We won't go too much into that. Some people may be familiar with that process, others may not. But basically, if you have your File Explorer open and you have your financial statement folder open, you would just drag it and drop it right into that. There's no need to, worry about how to label this or name it because we have it just right there in the folders. You can see this is kind of our view, so we can look at all of those folders at any time and just verify that that information is there. But from your view on the portal, you'll just see the 1 month and the document that's been uploaded. Any questions about the uploading process for the supporting documentation?
More about what the supporting, what the state considers detailed.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that question. So what we're looking for on a detailed financial statement is that it matches up with your invoice. So we are looking for line items that include agency capacity building, employment, education and cognitive development. This may take some maneuvering on your side. What we have seen some agencies do is they are subheaders under, grants and need or something like that. And then these are subheaders. You'll need to talk with your department and see how that works, or you'll need to adjust your QuickBooks. The reason we have it set up like this is because we're really working on our consistency. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to have the application, right? This part of the application be reflective of the annual report, that you will see that this is in your statement of work on your contract. So it matches up with your budget on your application. And then it also matches up with your monthly invoice, which should also match up with your detailed financial statement. So that way everything's pretty much in line. We're all using the same wording instead of having a column that's like office equipment and all of that. That can be tracked under other, or it can be tracked in another way that you find useful. The detailed financial statement should just be on CSBG funds. We're not looking for any other, if you guys have any other funding sources coming in, we're just wanting a breakdown of CSBG funds.
When will I have access to the sheet that you're playing with so I can outline those categories in my QuickBooks so that I can streamline this?
We should be able to get you that today, Doug. We will, Cecilia and I have availability to be able to share this document with you. So if you have emailed myself and Cecilia and Ellery your Google email, then we'll be able to get that set up. All we have to do is go over and hit share and we can get that shared.
Yeah, I can also just share a copy of this, of your budget breakdown as we have it for you, Doug, right away. And then Heather, Carrie had her hand up.
Yes, thank you for that.
Just going back to the subheaders, I mean, most of us probably have QuickBooks to generally like looking like this subheaders. I think the one space that's going to be tricky for all of us, because I'm assuming most of us look at CSBG or any other restricted funds as a class in QuickBooks, is when it comes down to payroll. So there's no way our payroll is going to be looking at housing particularly, and that's now how you want that to be filled. So that is really impossible for all of us and probably not logical for us to like amend our QuickBooks for that. So I don't know how you want to handle that. In the past, that was a whole separate line until this year on our invoices for CSBG related to the FNPs that we're working through, but I'm not sure it's going to need a reflection because it's not going to be able to be pulled as housing or employment or other things.
Thanks, Carrie. I really appreciate that question too. Talking specifically about Teton County, because you guys are a little bit different, because all of your funds go just for housing, and that includes your staff. They
Right.
are paid primarily because they're helping individuals with housing only. Then your QuickBooks can show the breakdown of payroll and also housing, because that will be really easy for us to track.
Okay.
Any other agencies, we can work with you guys individually to kind of troubleshoot that area. What we've asked is if your staff is designated towards one domain, right? So housing would be a good example of that. Then on your budget that you reflected all of that under housing, right? But most agencies are not like that. Most agencies are not just doing housing alone. If your staff are working with employment and maybe some training and some behavioral health or physical health, then what we asked is that you guys actually put that under direct services, salary, and wages. So that will look different. We'll be able to track that under personnel and staff wages, if that makes sense. And anytime, like you said, we know we're gonna have some learning pains with this process. We do feel like it's going to streamline the efforts in the future, but with anything, we're gonna have some growing pains. So definitely just reach out anytime you're like, hey, this might make sense for the rest of the grantees, but not for me. And then we can kind of troubleshoot with that. Okay, any other questions? Great questions so far.
I will add, for those of you that are using QuickBooks and having to, especially if you're using QuickBooks Online, not so much on the desktop version, if you're using QuickBooks Online and you're having to track all of your payroll into different categories, QuickBooks Online recommends that you not use the funding source as a class, but have your classes set up as programs. Then your funding stream is the customer. But that being said, if you have it set up as a class, a lot of QuickBooks Online will not allow you to do payroll to separate out into different classes. And that is something you have to do as a journal entry after to reallocate funding. We can talk about that more in detail later. That is specific to QuickBooks Online, but I just wanted to let you guys know that there are some workarounds for those people who have to do time and effort logs to put things in the right funding category. And I can certainly provide training and technical assistance around that later.
Susan, I'd love to talk offline on that. We're still on desktop, but we're hoping to make the transition to online this year. And that gives me like palpitations to have to change the way. So I'll talk with you offline.
Yeah, that transition is hard. For those of you that are using QuickBooks Desktop, please know that QuickBooks is going to stop supporting desktop in the next 2 years, and everything will have to go online. So that is a question just to keep in mind, and we can certainly talk about that later. Kyle has his hand up, Heather.
Okay, Kyle?
So first, if you are switching from desktop to online, do not do it in the middle of a fiscal year. I did that at the end of a fiscal year. That was a nightmare. Don't do that. The other part, Heather, is I know that you allowed for the CSBG staff to be like its own category, just reminding us that we will still want to account for what categories they should go into, because the smart forms for the year end still want every expense into one of those domains.
Yeah, thank you for that, Kyle. That is, I wanted to just jump in on the conversation here and clarify to everybody here that the reason we made this change this year is to facilitate reporting on the annual reports. Everything that we're trying to do or changing within this program is to really hopefully make the connection between what we do and what you do day to day, month to month, more streamlined with what OCS is requesting, so that it's hopefully, I mean, like I said, there's going to be some growing pains, but hopefully in the end, it's easier on all of us. So just my 2 cents there.
Thank you. Okay, if we are good with the invoices, I'd love to show you a little bit about the organizational standards. So any other questions about invoices? Okay, we're going to go to Albany County's portal. There are obviously, as you guys know, 2 different types of organizational standards. One is for public and one is for private. So today we'll just kind of be looking at the public, but I can also show you the private if we have a little extra time. So this link is not 100% complete right now, but it will be complete by next Wednesday. We will also be doing the training on October 10th. So my recommendation is come in and look at it, play around with it, get familiar with it. And then on October 10th, we'll dive a little bit deeper and really use that opportunity as a time to do Q&A as well. So part 1, we obviously have the organizational standards from NASCASP. I guess it's from Community Action Partnership, the National Association. So you have the Center of Excellence, how they develop these, what they need. It also gives you different ways to meet these, the differences between. So any resources or review that you want to look at, you can see here. So that is part 1. Part 2 is the actual standards and the supporting documentation. So again, you'll just use this little pop-out box to pull up yours. If you are in default mode with Excel, you just want to make sure that you're always opening it up in Google Sheets. Google Sheets enables you to move through the process and not have to worry about saving it, uploading it, doing all of that crazy stuff. So just always making sure that you are in Google Sheets. You can see that, again, we have several different tabs down here. Our first tab is the compiled, so just kind of a cover sheet tab. This shows you exactly where you are with your agency on compliance and compliance met rate. It also provides our office some space down here to make additional notes based on your fiscal questionnaire and your risk assessment. You'll see that there's different boxes here. And so you have your self-assessment box. This is calculating your score based on your self-assessment. We have contracted with CSNO this year to do the initial review of all org standards. And so this is CSNO's review and whether you're meeting compliance. And then finally, we'll just be doing kind of a spot check and we'll be looking at actual compliance here. So we will kind of show how all of this is self-populated. The agencies don't do anything on this initial page. Everything is self-populated, and we ask that you not work with any of the areas within this page. What I've done is taken the organizational standards and we've broken them down. Originally, they were set up to go 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. Instead, this year we're looking at it as more of a domain approach. And so we've broken it down into different domains. Our goal, our hope is that this is really going to help you be able to complete the process much quicker and much easier. Instead of going back and forth and back and forth, we have listed all of your board tripartite and your audit information in one tab. The next tab is based on your application. The next tab is based on your community needs assessment, policies and bylaws, a couple miscellaneous. We have the state fiscal questionnaire, which is a requirement for desk reviews. We have the quarterly report. This, you have nothing to do on this tab. Instead, the state will do it. You'll see that only there's a state compliance. If you are completing your quarterly reports on time, all of these standards are automatically met. You don't have to supply any additional information as long as you're submitting your quarterly reports on time. We've also included the TAT directly into the organizational standards spreadsheet. So anyone who falls below the 70% met rate will be able to track their technical assistance plan within this spreadsheet. So let's go back to tripartite and audit. Again, what we tried. Yes.
Sir, if I may interrupt you for just one moment, Christina has a question, and I wanted to make sure she got that in before you got into the details.
Thank you, Susan, so much for letting me know, because I can only see my screen. So that's very helpful. Thank you.
Hi, Heather. I just wanted to see on this spreadsheet, are there macros? Is it macro embedded Excel?
That's a really good question. No, we don't have that with our organizational standards or our invoices, but that is something that we work with the annual report for the feds. But as far as our documents in-house, no, they are not embedded with macros. Cecilia, do you want to touch? I tell you the truth, I'm not familiar or that familiar with macros. So that's all I know is like yes or no. I don't, know all the ins and outs of macros and what the benefits are for that.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on those either. But I know you're probably asking, Christina, because of the issues that we constantly have with you with the annual report, and making sure that you can receive them. So yeah, no, you shouldn't experience any issues here, because all of these links are literally just links to other like Google folders that you should already have like the same access to. So there shouldn't be any real kind of big hurdles to get past your cybersecurity measures. This should all be pretty straightforward.
All right, thank you.
Great question. Thank you. Yeah, and thank you, Cecilia, for always remembering how that relates to each individual grantee. So you can see again, we've tried to really highlight the yellow sections. That should be an automatic, reminder to you that as a sub-grantee or as a grantee, you're required to fill out anything that's in yellow. Let's start here with the organizational standards. So obviously wrote word for word as the current standards in column I. We've broken down the organizational standards on what exactly we are looking for and what it needs to meet compliance. And then in column G, we're telling you what that document is. And so here's an example. The department demonstrates low-income individuals' participations in its activities. So what we are asking for is the board roster. And for the board roster, we need to know their name, their email, and what category they're representing. Some of these items we've tried to go through as an agency and use information you've already provided to us. We've tried to do that on a few domains, but quite honestly, it was just too much for us to do on all of the domains. But every once in a while, you'll see the folder. And when you go into the folder, you'll see what we've already updated. So 1.1 is a good example. You guys provided us your board roster with your application. If you come over to column F, you'll see that it's highlighted because it's your need to go into each of these folders and upload. As soon as you hover over one of these, the folder should automatically pop up. When that folder pops up, you just click on it And you'll see here that we have a board roster. I'm in Albany counties, and so if I open this up, you'll see that Albany County has completed the part of the application that included the board roster. That should be for all of you guys. It should automatically be in there for 1.1. Again, your guys' responsibility, upload the document, date the document. So if this was completed during the application, I'm going to guess that it was probably around June. You want to make sure that it fits within the time frame, right? So between January of 23 and January of 24, which it fits, which means that you guys would mark it as met. When you fill out columns C and E, they will turn to white, which means that if you have a yellow highlight here, you have not addressed the item yet, okay? Once you guys complete your section of C and E and F, then CSNO will come through and do their review. All of our grantees are required to complete the organizational standards by December 31st this year. In the month of January, CSNO will do their initial review. They will go through and say whether it meets the criteria or if it's unmet. And then if they have anything that's unmet, so say that this document falls outside of the time frame, they're going to notify you in January that you have 4 weeks to reload or upload new supporting documentation to be able to reach 70% or above. That gives you the month of February to complete that. In March is the compliance review with the state. Once the compliance review with the state is completed, if we still see an unmet and that your overall rate falls below the 70% rate, then a TAP will be initiated. And so then we'll start with the TAP. So you guys have December 31st as your hard date to get everything uploaded. CSNO does review in January. In February, you have 4 weeks to remedy any issues to get successful completion of 70% or above. And then the state will come in and do the final compliance review and determine if a TAP needs to be met or not. So let's go through a couple samples here.
Doug has a question I'll ask, and also Carrie.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Doug.
Ooh, thank you. That was a lot of talking at once. I didn't understand a word, but thank you all. As we're looking at the folders and stuff, I just had a quick question pop up. So we have 4.1, 5.4, 5.8, and 7.7 together. Is that one folder or are those separate folders? Because it looks like they're separate folders.
Yeah, great question. I appreciate that. So what we try to do is we try to go in and lump standards together. And so here's a really good example of why this is all on one page instead of following the normal format of going 4 and then 5 and then 7. Instead, these have all been lumped under tripartite and audit because these are all of your tripartite training. And so we have taken all of these standards, we've broken them down and said to meet these standards, you need to hold a training and give your board members copies of and also review your mission statement, your bylaws, your roles and responsibilities, and your whistleblower policy. That should be in your board meeting minutes. If you do this all in one meeting, which would be our recommendation, right? Maybe your beginning of the year meeting, say that you conduct this in November of every year, then you would just go, this is one folder, and all you would have to do is put in your November meeting minutes.
Cool.
But those November meeting minutes have to state this, has to state
the limit of it.
Yep. So you have to say
portions, you would have to do both those.
Correct. So you would have to say this was your annual board training. And then you also have to say the board received copies and they reviewed and then each of these separately. If you say board training and then list these, then you're not meeting standards because they're also supposed to get copies of, right? So you want to make sure that you're really looking at this and making sure in your board meeting minutes, have you stated it correctly? And if you have, perfect. All you need is that one document.
And for those of you that don't do it all in one and you're having to upload 4 minutes, please note it's board minutes, mission statement, board minutes, member roles and responsibilities. So when I go in there to look at the folder, I know what I'm looking for in those minutes to make sure that it meets the standards. Please note, and we're going to talk about this in more of the training later on in October, but many of our standards have multiple components, like Heather just said, where it's like you have to collect the data, you have to analyze the data, and you have to report out on the data. So those are why it's so important for you to be able to identify what minutes you're putting up there, so all 3 of those check marks can be met in those minutes.
A follow-up question on that.
Yeah.
What is our time frame for, I mean, technically, since we're going into a new fiscal year, it should be October 1 through September 31 for these two. What's our time frame for these documents? I've already done a board training. It makes silly sense for me to do another one next month, other than I have to because I have a new board member coming on. So kudos.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Documents that meet this.
Yeah, so if you held your board training, the reason we have these dates, and I really went back and forth, it's like, do we count fiscal year? But then I thought, what if someone uploads something in December because they weren't going to meet this? Then do we say, yeah, that still counts, right? So if someone didn't do something last fiscal year, can they upload it in December and that still meets? So this took some time, but we're going to try to stick within these time frames. So if you did it, say, in October of last year, yeah, we would recommend that you do it fresh for 2023 instead of going back, say, 15 months. We're just going to try to stick within that 12-month time frame.
Perfect.
And then I also want to draw your attention to column D, particularly around the mission statement. You'll see that Heather has the date in there of 2019 to 2024. That's because the mission statement only has to be reviewed every 3 to 5 years, right? So 5 years. So you can see that if you have minutes that indicated prior to January or that you had minutes after January 1st of 2019, your mission statement minutes are then compliant because you're within that 5-year time frame that she has in there. So those time frames in column D are really important and have already allocated or been adjusted for those that are only met on the occasion, not the ones that are maintained all the time. And Kyle has his hand up.
Sorry.
I'm just gonna jump in really quick on that, Susan. I appreciate that. Yes, we definitely have the time frames in. My recommendation, my history as an executive director would be just to have set agendas where you hit all of these every year. So that way you're not like, oh my God, that happened 6 years ago, or what year was it that we did that? If you just include this on your November agenda every single year, then you're making sure that you're hitting all of these. But you were correct, Susan. They don't have to be hit every year to meet the standard. I would say it would be much easier if you went ahead and did it every year, just because then you don't have to remember what's 2 years, what's 5 years.
Oh, I absolutely agree on that. And again, these are things that you should be doing anyway, not just because the organizational standards tell you to do it. This is good organizational management across the board. So I agree. Just to know that the standards do give you some room for things like strategic planning that you don't do every year.
Absolutely. Cecilia, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to give the space to Carrie if she had questions remaining.
Yeah, questions of clarity and just some comments. Like, I think this looks great and a lot more streamlined, but it's a big change coming out of all of our stuff in Cap 60. And it sounds like you're not able to transfer all this for us, whereas in the past, our Cap 60s would transfer annually so we could then save the time of not having to upload. I mean, I don't know about anyone else, but the organizational standards, I totally agree, Susan, that they're necessary and so important, but it also is a huge time commitment for Jessica and myself to enter at the end of year. And so I wanted to just throw it out there because we're starting fresh. Nothing's going to transfer. And I know every one of us, year end is like the critical crunch for our client base. And also if you're a nonprofit, for fundraising. So if there's any flexibility with this dynamic change this year to have a little more flexibility in our deadlines and dates, because we're starting from fresh with new dates. So maybe some things that we would have been rolling don't transfer. This is huge. I think carrying forward, as long as this moves forward and it will, you know, like carry over our documents from year to year, then I think this looks way more efficient than Cap 60. But this transition this year is going to be, in my opinion, I don't know about everybody else, but it seems like it's going to be like double time. So I don't know how everyone else is feeling on that and if there's any sort of leniency.
So I definitely appreciate your comments, Carrie, and I can understand where you're coming from. It is a big change from Cap 60, but the reason we made that big change is because of some of the hiccups with Cap 60. I would say, I'm going to guess about 80% of our programs did not have carryover with the documents that they had hoped for. I would also say that the amount of time that was spent in getting all of those documents uploaded into Cap 60 is going to be significantly condensed this year. So even though it is a new system, I still feel like it's going to be more efficient and being able to meet the deadlines is going to be much easier this year than it has been in the past. And one thing that we've seen is we have seen some of our smaller agencies, you know, just trying to figure out how do you manage all of these requirements with CSBG as a grantee. It is easier sometimes to do as a sub-grantee because you're not required to do all of the organizational standards, and having a larger program kind of take on that burden. We've seen some of our counties condense into where one agency has taken on a few different counties, because that one agency can do organizational standards for everybody instead of requiring each of the counties to take that on. So counties are sometimes becoming sub-recipients, sub-recipients. An example of that would be in Laramie County. We've seen where Platte County was getting a small amount of funds, say $25,000, $30,000 to run their program for the whole year. And this is a big burden, right? When CSBG is only, say, 1/10 or 1/15 of the funding source that's coming in, but the time to keep up on it is really difficult. And so with Calc, the Laramie County was able to kind of take on this burden for Platte County, and then Platte County was able to become more like a sub-recipient. So those are all good questions, definitely something that we're trying to figure out, but the state is really held to the fire by the feds. What I have actually learned is we are one of the only states in the nation that is requiring a 70% met rate. In fact, that is not a national standard. The national standard is 100% met rate. When Cecilia and I complete the annual report, it asks us how many agencies had 100% net rate. We understand that that has been a burden. Our goal is to increase from 70% to an 80%, looking at that in the next 2 or 3 years. So I actually see these as becoming maybe more strenuous than they have been in the past. So I wish I could give you some really good news and be like, oh yeah, we could extend those deadlines or we can make it a little bit easier. But unfortunately, I think that Wyoming has been trying to do that just because of the cumbersome Cap 60 program. And now we're trying to say, how can we work internally to ease the burden, but still make sure that we are running, helping programs to be quality programs at the same time.
Yeah. And I assume those deadlines are set by the feds. Like we couldn't transition as a state and say, let's do our org standards in the summer or at a different time of year, which might transition differently for different organizations. But I just think, I know that most of us are in like the highest client need possible in the last quarter of the year.
And Carrie, this is Susan. I would love to have a conversation with you individually about how we can support you in this, and I will reach out after this meeting. Okay. And I'd love to talk further about like the idea of getting a bunch of counties together and doing this differently for the smaller counties, but which offline, but yeah.
That sounds great. Very good. And just to answer your question really quickly about the timeline, we are held to those. As you guys know, you don't fill out like your annual report until several months after the end of the fiscal year, right? Even though your data has to be all captured into Cap 60, that's what we're working with as well with the state. So we have to meet those annual reports, that all of that information is available for the annual report, even though it's not asked till several months later, but it has to be met by a certain deadline. So good questions.
Okay. Just if you have another moment, Heather, Kyle has his hand up.
Oh, great. Thank you. Kyle.
This kind of leads into it. I'm wondering if we could make this sheet available in January once you switch over saying, hey, these are available from January 24 to January 25, so that as we get our minutes and do the work, we can just pop it in and forget it.
Gosh, that is a really,
that's a great idea. That would help with the year-end crunch.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, since you have access to this at all times. This is your management system. So this is not something that's only available to the state. You have access to this all the time.
And just to play on that a little bit, if you were to save this as an Excel document and you were to create your own folder for FY25, then it would make the process really simple when you get ready to move documentation over. So even if we just have the FY24 here, you could create your own folder for FY25, start saving everything in there. And then the burden of looking for it, trying to put your hands on it, remembering what folder it went into, you could just have kind of that org standard folder. Great. Something to really consider for interns as well, right? I think
what Kyle's suggesting is you all having this available for 25 sooner, like cloning it and having that folder, so we're not even going back and saving it in our own drive, but rather having that accessible out of the gate.
I agree. I do think that's what he's saying, but I'm saying until we have that capability, it would work the other way around as well. So here on line 16, you'll see that it's asking when your county's fiscal year ends. And here it shows that the annual audit is due within 9 months after your entity's fiscal year ends. So that's really what's going to matter for the due date here. Again, 2 different standards met just with inputting your annual audit. 2 standards met, making sure that your members either have been given a copy of the audit or they know where the link is on the website and that they're notified of any findings. So let's go ahead and look at how our met rates.
Heather, real quick on the audit. Can we get confirmation that you will allow us to meet the standard if we meet the Department of Health's requirement for the fiscal documents? Not all agencies are required to have an audit.
Yes, that is correct. But we do need a 990. We need a financial review. Whatever is stated in the Department of Health, you have to make sure that you're meeting those requirements. But that is correct. Okay, so here you can see as we start saying what's met and what's unmet, it gives you 3 different readings. Again, the reading is your initial assessment. The yellow is CSNOs and the green is the states. If you come back here to the full page, you'll see where all of this is self-calculated. So let's see if we can kind of go through the other tabs really quickly. Like I said, we'll go more into depth. Back on this tab, I also wanted to show you, we're still in the process of trying to make this more efficient. So it's not like we're like, oh, thank God we never have to work standards again. You can see that we're still looking on ways that we can make this more effective and efficient. If you have any suggestions or recommendations, or if you need any comments, please just leave your initial here, like HR, and then my comment. You can leave, KB and Kyle's comments, so that way we can look at those comments. And if you have any suggestions or recommendations on improving the process. So here with the application, this is your community action plan and your mapping worksheet. Again, this has already been uploaded for you. So Carrie, I hope that you see where we have really tried to make as many shortcuts as possible for our grantees. We have worked so hard this summer in trying to transfer a lot of these documents. So we hope that that will be beneficial to you. But there still are some documents that, yes, you are going to have to upload. But a lot of these standards were never met before with the state, already having the document. We're trying to cross-reference. If it's a standard, what can the state use for your community action plan or for your mapping worksheet to meet these standards? So we're hoping that that's really going to help. Your risk assessment.
Which is why that looked so different this year. And we spent a lot of time on the community action plan so that it would fit with organizational standards better. Just needed to shout that out.
Thank you, Cecilia. I appreciate that. So here's the CNA. The first thing is your tripartite acceptance for the minutes, right? And then here is your actual CNA. It has been uploaded. But what we're asking you to do is to G, which is an extra column for your CNA. You need to identify what page that is on. So this is your date completed. Hopefully that's on your cover page. And so you would just say page 1. Here it's asking for your methodology. You need to show that focus groups and surveys were used for low-income individuals, focus groups and surveys from community partnerships, and that it used focus groups, interviews, and numerical data. So if your methodology has information from all 3 of those, you would just put page 3, paragraph 4, right? And maybe this is page 3, paragraph 2. So that way, when we are assessing it, we can look at it just as quickly as we're trying to help you guys upload it. So this is where you guys can really help us in not rummaging through your CNA, that we're able to see it quickly. These will be carried over into the future years. Another thing is we have received permission from OCS. If your CNA is outside of the 3-year time frame, you can still assess it as met or approved, because it is approved if it's outside of the 3-year time frame. We'll go to policies and bylaws. So again, your org standards, what it needs to be completed. If it's a employee handbook, policy, written guidelines, or a link for your hiring policy, your orientation, handbook, evaluation, record retention, again, just putting in what the date or what the page and the paragraph is so we can locate those quickly. Go to miscellaneous. So miscellaneous are job descriptions, information on how you're sharing Roma information. That can be either emails that you have forwarded to your staff, or it can actually be the certificates. And the volunteer sign-in sheet would just be a completed volunteer sign-in sheet that volunteers come in and work for you guys. Fiscal questionnaire is the same fiscal questionnaire that we asked all of our on-site people to fill out this year. It is a requirement by the state as part of the desk review. And I think that's about it. So any questions on the org standards or the time frame or how they're going to be run this year?
If we don't have,
oh, go ahead, Doug.
If we don't have page and paragraph on everything, is that going to be considered unmet?
That's a good question. No, but it probably will go back as a question. Page and paragraph, I think, is only for like the big documents, like your CNA and your policies. Otherwise, for like the audit, we don't require page and paragraph, or for the application, no page and paragraph. So hopefully they're just in the sections where we would need them. Like your board minutes, yeah, you don't need a page and paragraph there, right? So you don't have to worry about that.
But kind of, I think, you know, what I'd like to add to this is the value of you adding that page and paragraph is not only to save us time in reviewing that, but to also make sure that you are reviewing your own CNA to ensure that it is actually meeting all of these standards. Because we, as Susan said, when she's going to go through and review them, and then when we follow up on the review, like there's several kind of steps within a lot of these standards that you kind of have to check off. And so that'll give you a good opportunity to notice, hey, maybe our CNA didn't actually accomplish this one this year. But speaking more closely about the CNA in that sense, we are making efforts. I know I've been saying this all year. It just kept getting pushed. And this is partially why the CNA, if your CNA is outside of the 3-year period for now, it's approved. Because we're making larger efforts with our state program to sort of reevaluate the CNA process. And we're going to, as part of that, send out kind of like a organizational guide for that and an outline. And so hopefully better connect CNAs to these organizational standards and just make sure that they're fully rounded and really effective for your programs. So just as a thought going forward.
Well, I think it's a brilliant idea, and I think it forces people to do all those things you said they were doing. I'm just worried about agency capacity right now in my particular situation is all. So it's not something I'm trying to duck and dodge. It's something I'm wondering what variances are there. Like, I'm going to be doing this and I find value in doing this. What happens if I'm not able to get all of the pages and paragraphs outlined is all.
And
we
Doug,
appreciate that very much. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just want to reiterate, CSNO, as your state association, is here to assist you. We can certainly provide the level of support for you as necessary. That's why you guys pay dues. So not that we can do it for you. That's not what we're talking about, but working with you to make the process supported and with that technical assistance. On another note, Heather, I know our grantees already know this. I sent this out already. I added to the chat that there are pending changes to the CFR Part 200 and the uniform guidance. Heather, this is something that you're going to want to let the Department of Health Fiscal know, because all of those guidelines for audit requirements are being proposed to be changed, which means that we're going from a $750,000 federal amount to $1 million, which is going to make even fewer of our agencies, should those be added, even fewer of our agencies being able to meet those standards. We know that, as Kyle said, that it's up to the state for what you choose to add in there, but we're hoping that the Department of Health will also make their adjustments as necessary to match up to those, so we're not trying to lead into different standards for the same grant. So just wanted to bring that up. There's a link in there. We're 60 days out on public comment on that one, and I imagine for this year we are not going to see any changes in the uniform guidance for those of you that receive any federal grants. Probably we'll start seeing changes and new recommendations coming out for fiscal year 25. I just wanted to make sure it was on everybody's radar so you're prepared for that, and that your audits, because this will impact your audits in the future. So just wanted to let you guys bring that up so you guys are aware of that.
And Susan, I'm just going to tag on to that really quickly. You know, the state of Wyoming is, you know, going to definitely probably follow whatever's in the uniform guidelines. But as an association, it's also great for the association to have OCS consider that in the work standards. So, you know, looking at 8.1, 8.2, 3, and 4, that it is stated as an annual audit. So that can also be changed based on the thresholds of the CFR 200. So good advocacy on part of the association to have OCS really consider, especially for some of the rural states like Wyoming and our smaller programs.
So I did ask that question of OCS, and their response was it is up to the state office to determine what documents they will accept to meet that standard. While they use the word audit, they said the state holds the discretion, like you answered with Kyle. Like, yes, the state will accept X, Y, and Z as these because we know 90% of our eligible entities don't meet the threshold for an annual audit. So I appreciate your ability to look at those. OCS isn't going to, they told me they're not going to change the language around it because it affects so few of their agencies, but really allowing the state to really maintain how they will consider that as met. So I really appreciate your office's flexibility and working with those small counties that we just are never going to meet those. Even larger counties now, if it moves up to $1 million in federal funds, there's many of us that are never ever going to meet those. So I appreciate that flexibility. Thank you.
Okay, I know that we've all kind of kept you a little bit longer than we were hoping to. I think we dived a little bit more into the org standards than just giving you kind of a quick overview. But our goal today was really about the invoices. So you guys feel really comfortable about those. You can also start updating your org standards immediately. If you are running into questions or problems, you could maybe, you know, highlight those during our October 10th meeting. But anytime, reach out to us if you have any questions. As far as the quarterly report, on-site monitoring, and client surveys, those are all to be determined. And as we move through that process, you'll see how those start coming out from under construction. Cecilia, is there anything that you wanted to add before we end today?
Nope, I think that's everything other than just really, we appreciate you attending this meeting today and the grace that you give us in making this transition. We really do hope that this will be a better platform for our use going forward.
Absolutely. Reiterate everything Cecilia said. We know that you guys have extremely busy days. We are one of probably many funding sources, and trying to take time out of your day to learn about one funding source's requirements is very much appreciated. We're always available. Just shoot us an email or a chat, whatever works best for you. And hopefully we're able to answer your questions. Again, thank you for giving us some grace. It is a tricky line to walk in making sure that we're getting our federal requirements met, but at the same time trying to make them as efficient and effective for you guys as possible. So thank you for continuing to share your ideas and your suggestions on making this a better process. And that's it. Welcome to FY24 in the next couple days. And FY23 is on the way of wrapping up, and we'll be in touch.
Heather, I have one quick question, really
Sure.
quick. Have you received any guidance from the feds on our income eligibility starting on Monday?
I have not. What I know is what they've been saying over the last many months, which is we go back to 125.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you guys, and have a great day.
Heather, real quick, is there an update on the contract?
There is. We believe that we finished